Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Succinct Psychology, aka Succinct. My name is Jaia Hendrickson, and today I'm going to be starting out Chapter 3 in Principles of Social Psychology. And again, I want to mention these slides have been pulled from the University of Minnesota libraries, and they have been edited for presentational purposes. Alright, so Chapter 3 is going to involve social affect. And some of the topics we're going to be covering in this chapter are going to be moods and emotions in our social lives, emotions, stress, and well-being, and then also how to feel better, so coping with negative emotions. So affect, the A within social psychology's ABCs, refers to the feelings that we experience as part of our everyday lives. And though affect can be harmful when it gets out of control, our affective experiences are typically beneficial in that they allow us to function more efficiently and they increase our chances of survival. Although affect is involved in many aspects of our lives, it is particularly social. Our emotions provide us with important information about our relationships with others. So one component of affect is what's known as mood. And mood is the positive or negative feelings that are in the background of our everyday lives and experiences. And you may remember that I discussed this in Chapter 1. And emotions are affective states like moods, but they're typically shorter-lived, stronger, more intense, and they're more specific form of affect. And you might have also remembered from Chapter 1 when I mentioned that positive moods may lead us to think more creatively, and they allow us to be more flexible in our responses to opinions that are inconsistent with cultural norms. And emotions are comprised of several components, one component being the subjective experience, which is cognitive. Then we also have a behavioral component, which is the expression of emotions. And then we also have a physiological component, which is the arousal. And emotions are also particularly social. Most emotions have a social component to them. So we experience love, anger, hate, embarrassment. We experience all these emotions for a reason. These emotions allow us to develop and maintain positive relationships with others. So the goal of this chapter is going to be to review the ways in which the wide influence of affect on our social lives and how we utilize moods and emotions to help us better understand our social worlds and how those relate to our happiness and well-being. And well-being is just our sense of satisfaction with our everyday experiences. All right, let's talk a little bit about the physiology of affect. So our emotions are determined in part by responses of the sympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is the division of the autonomic nervous system that's involved in preparing the body to respond to threats. And this is done by activating the organs and the glands in the endocrine system. So when it's activated, the sympathetic nervous system provides the body with energy to respond to the environment. So the liver puts extra blood into the bloodstream, the heart pumps more blood, our pupils dilate so we can see better, our respiration is increased, and we perspire to cool the body. When we experience the activation of the sympathetic nervous system, this is known as arousal. And arousal is changes in bodily sensations such as increased blood pressure, heart rate, perspiration, and respiration. And when the sympathetic nervous system works in opposition of the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the division of the autonomic nervous system that's involved in relaxing, resting, digesting, and recovering. So we see here in this picture, we have on one side the parasympathetic, and then on the other side, the sympathetic. So on the sympathetic side, we have dilates the pupil, accelerates heart rate, inhibits digestion. These are all things that prepare the body to respond to, say, a threat in the environment. And then on the parasympathetic side, we have things such as constricts the pupil, slows heart rate, stimulates digestion. These are all things that prepare the body to relax. All right, now let's talk about some basic and secondary emotions. So there are both basic emotions, which are communicated through culturally shared facial expressions, and secondary emotions, which are more complex, which are those that provide us with more complex feelings about our social world. There's a bit of a debate about what exactly constitutes as the basic emotions, but for the purpose of this course, we're going to say that those basic emotions are anger, contempt, disgust, happiness, sadness, fear, and surprise. And basic emotions are emotions that are based primarily on the arousal produced by the sympathetic nervous system, and it doesn't require much cognitive processing. The basic emotions are expressed and experienced consistently across many different cultures. And there's also a large number of secondary emotions, such as guilt, shame, or embarrassment. And secondary emotions are those that provide us, emotions that provide us with more complex feelings about our social world, and they're more cognitively based. So you see here in this diagram, we have a bunch of secondary emotions. We have intense, pleasant, mild, unpleasant to kind of categorize them. So in the intense and pleasant part, we have astonished, amused, delighted. Those would all be intense and pleasant. And we have unpleasant and intense. We could have things such as alarmed, distressed, or frustrated. And then in pleasant and mild, we could have things such as sleepy, serene, satisfied. And in mild and unpleasant, we can have things such as gloomy, depressed, droopy, bored. So these are all secondary emotions. And this kind of just gives you an idea of the wide range of secondary emotions that we have. All right, let's discuss some cultural and sex differences regarding emotions. And when we're talking about cultural differences in emotions, I want you guys to keep in mind the theme from chapter 1 of self-concern and other concern. So depending on the culture, whether it's collectivist or individualist, in collectivist cultures, the emotions are going to be more focused on other concern. And in individualist cultures, such as Western societies, the emotions are going to be more focused on self-concern. So self-enhancing emotions such as pride and anger are more culturally appropriate in Western cultures, whereas emotions such as friendliness and shame are more culturally appropriate in Eastern cultures. Easterners experience more more positive emotions when they're with others. And Westerners experience more positive emotions when they're alone or as a result of their own personal accomplishments. And there are also gender differences in emotional experiences. Women report that they're more open to feelings overall, they're more open to expressing their emotions in public, and they're more accurate and articulate at reporting the feelings of others. And some research has even indicated that it's easier to read the emotions expressed by a woman. And so some of the observed gender differences in emotional experiences and expression are biological in orientation, but they're also socialized through experience. Alright folks, I'm going to end the video here before we go on for too long, but I hope you learned a thing or two about emotions, and I hope to see you guys next time.